Right. So, I do want to actually discuss Ukraine.
The Ukraine. You got an opinion about the Ukraine, Dean?
Not
Kostikas?
Not really, but this is again where I don't feel so
I
much...
invite you onto this show. Actually, I didn't invite you. Kind of invited yourself. Who invited this guy on the show? And you've got no opinion about the Ukraine.
I invited him.
You invited him?
I did, of course.
I didn't get the
I
memo.
told you we need to bring
I never read the attachments.
The curves.
That's what I'm saying. He does well.
Can you see yourself now?
Yeah, there I am. Hi. You know, with the black shirt, I look very fascist.
When were we talking about that? The black shirts thing?
Yeah, we were. All right, Katsu. Microphone. Lex. Let's go.
Okay. We'll get started with the show. Today we've actually got a special guest with us. And therefore...
Hang on. Before you even start. Seriously. Welcome to Romaic Ruminations. Not ruminations.
Of course.
Mise en forme. Reflations, yeah? A creeping or crawling motion.
Oh, God.
Erpome, where you are on your underbelly, TM, and you are creeping or crawling surreptitiously towards your end goal.
That's actually a far more apt description of what this show is.
Yeah. Who wants to be the creep and who wants to be the crawler? I'll leave it to you, dear viewer.
Yeah, post
Please
in the
continue.
comments below. Well, speaking of reflations, we've got a guest with us today.
Okay. I can see how those two topics and words interconnect.
Right.
Reflations and the fine gentleman sitting across the table from me.
Yeah, and I thought that this time we'll try to lower the average age of the people who actually are on this program.
What you mean from 85 to 83?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What would the average age be? To be honest, how old are you there, Dean? If you don't mind me asking. Now, listen, your age, I don't think it's an insult to even ask, right?
That's cool. I'm cool with that.
It's a compliment.
Just that with the whole reflations thing, does that mean am I a creep or am I a crawler?
No, you were asked a specific question.
Yeah, I was. I got to watch it.
You were allowed to be on this show where people are hammering the doors.
Oh yes.
To come in.
Oh yes.
In order to answer a specific question, answer the Colonel's question private. Do you even remember the question?
Yeah. Just turned 24, so...
Dean, welcome to the show.
Thanks
Dean
for having me.
Koutsourelakis, KK. I'm also a KK. So we're KK to the power of 2. Imagine what we would do if there were more KKs, 2 square, and do cube, and do various other things too. The world would be a very unsafe place indeed. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay, you can go now.
2Ks or 4Ks are fine, I suppose. We'll just leave the third one off.
Okay. It's your show.
So, Dean.
Hi, how can I help?
You've got to love Google Assist.
Romantic love is only between people. That means I am your friendly assistant, but I don't do romantic relationships. It also means I'm here to help, and I'll tell you the truth.
Well, just to let you know, Dean, that was completely unscripted.
all these sort of bombs and all these...
Well, it happens on this show. Half the stuff you see all the time are completely unscripted, and most of the bombs are the ones he actually throws
I'm
off.
finding great difficulty to close my mouth again.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
No,
Dean.
hang on. This is interesting.
Okay, go on.
Why?
Must you really know?
No, I shouldn't. Dean, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Why are you here?
Hey, why are you here? Clearly, it's not to meet us. Us, you already know, unfortunately.
That's irrelevant. Dean, a few words of introduction for people who don't know Dean. Dean is going to be my doctor as soon as he finishes university, and he will supply me with a good deal of drugs which are urgently required for various reasons. I'll leave that not to your imagination, but to logical conclusions. He is also an aspiring member of the Greek community, and when I say Greek community, what I mean by Greek community is the broader Greek community, as in the totality sum of us in general, and also specifically the Greek Orthodox community of Melbourne and Victoria, of whom he's a newly elected board member. So let's start with that. How do you feel being a newly elected board member of the Greek Orthodox community of Melbourne and Victoria?
That's pretty cool, I think sort of been welcomed in with open arms, and it's really cool for me to finally sort of see behind the scenes of sort of what happens at the Kinotita. For those that don't know, it goes by the Kinotita. It goes by a lot of different things, actually. And I think generally sort of representing younger people, I think we're going to be a bridge for those sort of two worlds that often sort of act in their isolation. It's natural, it's human nature that sort of things are confined to their own little spheres, but I guess I've been around long enough and volunteering long enough in the sort of Greek scene and the sort of multicultural space more broadly, because I think a lot of my interests tip into that as well, to sort of enact sort of meaningful change in between. So, yeah, it's cool. And I think finally now I'll actually be able to come up with something like some sensible conclusions and opinions of what's actually happening. Because I think so many people say things without actually knowing, the full story or knowing what's on both sides of the story. And, I'm very optimistic about like our community here, our story, and a lot of the people that are involved, So I've sort of never succumbed to the politics. I've never succumbed to the personal sort of biffs that people have with the space, because I believe in the space, And now that I get to meet certain people that are involved in the kinotita, like it does really reinforce that. I just realised that there's never enough you could do. So yeah, I forgot what the initial question was, but
I can see that.
that's έχω πάρει από σένα λίγο το tangential.
Well, let me ask you a question. Were you involved? You said you avoided politics, but were you involved in student bodies like NUGAS?
Yeah, but I guess Pete, NUGAS for a long time hasn't been a political entity or body, and like
what do you mean by that? It's not a political entity or body.
Because
says me, who's a NUGAS life member.
Bravo, συγχαρητήρια.
Thank you. I've even got the keyring to prove it.
I was never involved myself.
Well, I understand its origins a little bit different, but this is where so much of our history, so much of our tradition, and the way that we sort of do our thing it's all oral history. It's all sort of, he said this, then she said this, and this is kind of how NUGAS did things. And you see certain artifacts and stuff in the archives, and I'm sure there are plenty of individuals' houses and keyrings dangling around. But yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of the reason why people are connecting with their Greek Australian sort of story now is different, and that's probably a product of the sort of mainstream. And I know we talk about the sort of mainstream sometimes and how we are associated with that, but sort of mainstream culture and people's understanding of our spot within that. But also, Pete and Dean, like this is something I'm really sort of curious to talk about here as well. Like it's all about the hook for me, like how you hook people into this space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you really need to be open, social, non-invasive, non-intrusive. Like you really have to offer a sort of low bar entry into the space, as well as having these complex, high-level things happening.
Well, let's break a few of those down.
Yeah.
You're throwing a few.
Yeah, there's a
things
lot.
out
There's a
there,
lot.
and
What's the space?
Yes, that's the
Wow,
first question
cool.
I had.
Yeah,
Wow,
what is
cool.
the
Thanks for
space?
asking that, because I guess it makes so much sense to me, because I've been working over this idea for so long. It's just something I use, and I guess I expect people to understand, but it obviously doesn't always come across. And for me, the space is not only physically, the way we participate in the community, but also sort of spiritually, connections people feel. Physically in terms of events and what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the sort of entirety of the functioning. I do use the word ecosystem. I know some people don't like that. I'm looking at the camera because I think some of the guys will watch it. Like the ecosystem we have as a sort of community, and it obviously interacts with itself a lot, but it interacts with a lot of other communities as well. And for me, that is an integral part, an integral space in the broader Australian space. Like for me, it's sort of non-negotiable part of the identity, and there are obviously many others that are super important. But yeah, that's sort of how I see the space.
So let me ask you this question. That's the space, and I think that broadly we understand, if we sift out everything that you've said, that the space is the Greek community. Yeah?
Sure.
All of us here, the sum total of us, that's the space. That's your target area in which you wish to enforce your modus operandi and your various initiatives, which we'll get to a bit later if we've got time, if he lets us. He talks a lot. And, okay, so we understand what the space is. You speak as if you're alluding to the fact that possibly people cannot enter the space, that they are barred from the space. Talk to us about that. Why do you think that people are barred from the space? And if they are, how are they so barred?
That's cool. That's a really cool question as well. And I think there's maybe 4 layers to this. There's a conscious component to that and a subconscious component to that, the organised community component to that, and the unorganised community component to that. And sort of, if I can flesh them out, I think a lot of people sort of do connect with the unorganised and unofficial, not on paper, but in our heart sort of thing, Greek community. But in terms of the official organised space, yeah, I think that is hard for some people to access because, one, they were never introduced to it, so it's awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Like I grew up in Yarraville with sort of forgotten or maybe unacknowledged sort of quite significant Greek presence.
Mm-hmm.
And my folks used to have a butcher shop there, Wembley Avenue, if anyone knows. James and Dean meets, I'm Dean, obviously. And through them I inherited a lot
They
of
named the
connections.
business after you.
Yeah, well, they did at the time, yeah, back then.
Fantastic.
The sister missed out, my sister missed out, but that's because it was from a long time ago. So my parents were always involved in meat and stuff like that.
Did you get royalties as a result?
I used to work there
Okay,
a little
fair
bit,
enough.
and I used to steal little mothers as payment. So mum and dad will probably hear that story and laugh because they were
Brilliant.
only $1.50 back then, but now you pay $5, $6 for a packet of little mothers, which is crazy.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, no, serious. Anyway, I inherited a lot of connections through them, and I think
What about
understanding.
Sutsukeiko?
Φτιάχαμε, δεν ξέρω.
Okay,
We'll get back to that.
that's important.
If that's cool. If I can sort of
No,
also
it is
influence
important.
the steer of the conversation. But
I'm not interested in the space anymore. I'm interested in meat products.
yeah, it's cool. I will tell you more about that.
I'm fascinated by raw
I
meat,
will
and
tell you.
especially by offal. Anything to do with body parts which are for consumption, I'm your man.
Yeah.
So what's your stance on Majiritsa?
I tried it actually last year at my cousin's house,
Yeah.
but I think there's a this is a cool way to tie it in. I think there's a massive, obviously, medically anticipatory response and a psychological response, an expectation of what you're going to have.
Yeah.
And I think that put me off. And in that exact same way, Dean, I think that's kind of what people have with the organised Greek community in some ways.
Look at the way he just brought
Yeah,
that
man.
back.
Like, see, it's just full circle. So,
Sorry, I don't get it.
θα σου εξηγήσω.
No.
I sort of was describing before how I've grown up in the unofficial Greek community, the knowing where every neighbour lives, knowing the houses, knowing a bit more about their intimate sort of lives, just by the nature of it, you know. And I think a lot of people are very fond of that, and they realise the sort of value in that, even practically, right? Because the sort of that was born from a need for survival and all the rest of it. It makes sense that you sort of rely on each other, but in terms of an organised capacity, I think people hear too much before they get involved in the space. They put it off too quickly. It's that anticipatory response that I'm talking about. You know, it's like visceral, but it's not often first hand. It's often second hand. It's often someone saying something, you know, encouraging others, or sort of rather discouraging others to sort of be involved. And I guess I sort of never stood for that, you know. Like I said before about my sort of entrance into the Kinotita and finally being able to understand what happens, finally sort of seeing both sides of the story, I think we sort of knock things a bit too soon. I think we're very put off by these sort of spaces we don't understand.
Okay, so there's two spaces, and from what I understand, according to you, you have your unofficial space, which is basically the way we live our lives and relate to each other, whether that's shopping together, buying Majiritsa parts at the great butchery there, meeting each other as neighbours, meeting each other through personal connections, kubaries, all that. And then you have the organised Greek community, which are the entities. So the question is this. You say that you belong in the unofficial space, and now you're making a move into the, if you like, official space. But the way, from what I understand, that you're approaching the official space is you're approaching it from a negative point of view, moving to the positive. In other words, you've got this inherited negative view, which you're now understanding to be a positive. You're moving towards a positive view. And my question is this: why do we need the organised space at this time in our development? What is so significant about the organised space? And are you referring to the entire organised space as important, or specific bodies within that organised space? For example, no one gives a stuff about Pluto, which is why Pluto has been relegated to the status no longer of a planet, but Neptune apparently is important. Speak to that, if you will.
So I think there's just one small revision there that just needs to be said. Like, I think you guys asked me before why people don't take up the space, and I was describing that they often have it from the negative point of view.
You never
the sort
did.
of assumption. No, like I think you guys know this sort of personally, but you just asked me just to make it a bit more obvious. Like, my take is very optimistic and very positive because that's like who I am in my nature. And some people don't really see that as true because I think that is quite a rare quality. Comes with a bit of naivety, maybe at times as well, but I guess I've learnt to control that, check that over the years. My take on the Greek space, and any one of my friends sort of watching this will sort of get that, is that
Your friends will not be watching this.
I'll make sure they do.
They won't be watching this.
If I get one,
And no one watches this.
Billy will watch it.
Billy, turn it off now.
I've been very optimistic for a long time and sort of realizing that people need positive experiences and they need to hear the other side of the story to really assess something fairly. So yeah, if you ask anyone that's sort of known me for long enough or was involved, you know, with me in the sort of university club, started at Melbourne Uni, went to Nugas and sort of evolving into our own thing, GYG, which as a concept is cool, so we can explain that later, and now Kinotita. But no, I've never sort of been negative about it, you know. Like, people have told me not to involve myself because of X, Y, Z reasons, their own reasons, but not my reasons, you know.
Okay, so why is it important?
What's important? The space.
The organised space. You're now elected on the board of the Greek community. There were elections. There were so many positions, people vying for positions. You're in there. What does that mean for you? What are you going to do?
Cool. So yeah, I was wondering.
What's your job?
What's
your
wondering-
agenda? What is your ulterior motive? Why did you make me vote for you?
I didn't.
No, I know you didn't.
And I think. Can I tie that in somehow? No, I can't. I don't know. So you're asking personal reasons why it's important.
Absolutely.
And this is where I think, to be a little bit sort of philosophical about it, which is, I guess, the whole essence, like, you know, an unexamined life is kind of one not worth living in some ways. And I think if we really don't examine the possibilities of the connections we can make here, the stories we can tell, the perspective we can learn, like, I think we're really missing out. I studied Italian as well at university, so trilingual, which is kind of cool. And that understanding for me, just realizing that you can really plug into different versions of the world and learn different lessons from all of them and cross-compare is so powerful. And the fact that, because it's real, and I think...
It's true, I can see his hairs and they are standing...
Pilo erection, not the other kind of erection, but...
Helps be a
I
doctor.
can't see under the table.
Well, anyway, no. Like, that for me is a unique Australian opportunity. And I don't know why, but it's just sort of hit me so deeply because I really think we can create, we can tell story, we can learn things from each other that just aren't possible elsewhere in the world, I am actually more proud to be Greek Australian than I am to say that I'm Greek, because I haven't lived in Greece, paid taxes, or know anything about really what they've gone through, only secondhand. But again, this is first-hand experience for me, and this is real, and I'm actually so proud of the migration journey, about the struggle. We said off air before how, I look at the Greek community in the past with lots of romance and obviously highlight the positive bits.
Oh, that was a bit when we thought we were recording. It was actually very good. He was
that was right, yeah.
He was elegaic. Or is it elegiac? Either way, it was pretty good. Better than what he's talking about now.
And I look back on the romance and obviously try and highlight all the positive bits because we need that for the awareness and accessibility, Like, I know I'm sort of telling a little bit of a lie by not telling the full story, but I think people need that hook.
Who are you telling it to? Who are you telling the story to? Who's your target audience?
Well, to be honest, I'm telling it. I'm not sure I'm targeting specific people or groups of people. I'm kind of hoping that it'll just get there organically. And because this is where it's difficult, like...
certain people are definitely out of your audience.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
So I would not... I can tell you now...
Don't
that
sell the kid short.
I'm telling you now, like someone like my father would not be part of the target audience.
Why not?
Oh, actually, I think he might because in some ways what I'm trying to do as well, and I think I conduct this in my sort of real life day to day, it's like I sort of made a bit more of a New Year's resolution to be a bit more involved and a bit more present in the lives of elderly people around me.
Right.
And I kind of say that because my passed away sort of recently. And sorry to turn this into an emotional thing,
No,
but...
I thought it was because, that spending time with the elderly referred to him spending time with you and me.
One
Which
above.
is very nice, thank you.
Because,
we appreciate it.
Because, I guess...
I know that she was a great influence in your life.
Yeah, she was cool.
And a very important person, so we extend our condolences.
Absolutely.
Thanks. And I guess
Way to bring the tenor of the show down there.
Yeah, I know. We'll bring it back up. Don't worry, because there's a happy side to that, And I think these people that have gone through these certain things, I don't think we give them enough attention, enough of a voice, enough sort of love. They smother us, but are we smothering them back?
Okay. In terms of smothering, it was a very simple question. The question was, what do you see the Greek community can do now that you're in the elected?
That was never a question.
That was the question. So now you've got your target audience, you've got your hook, you've got all these
things. There's so much more.
Okay, you hook these people in. They say, Dean, talk to us. You are our prophet. Lead us to the promised land. What is the promised land?
I think that's their own to create, And I say that sort of no BS about it because
Right,
everyone's version...
Here's the promised land. It's Craigie Burn. Do what you will.
Well, if that's, again, first-hand for them and real and how they define their sort of connection with their own Greek identity, like, that's cool. That's their promised land. Like, who am I to... I obviously preach my version of the story.
What is your version of the story?
I guess I told you, like growing up in Yarraville, a sort of forgotten Greek community.
No, we get that, but that's your personal experience. You grew up in Yarraville, I grew up in Essendon. Pete, I'm sure, grew up, although he was spontaneously generated according to myth and legend. We all grew up somewhere. We all have our own personal story. Mm-hmm. We communicate that story as fellow human beings and share stories, but you're a member of a board.
True.
You're a member of an organisation that does certain things. One thing it does is it provides education. The other thing it does is it provides cultural events, which are the key identity markers in Melbourne, being the Antipodes Festival, the Film Festival, exhibitions, lectures. It does that. They were doing that before you came on board. What do you bring and what do you see that you can do for that organisation, and where is the trajectory that you would like in order to skew things according to your own worldview?
Yeah, cool. And thanks for asking that.
No, you don't have to thank me.
No, because it's something I have to think about because
you just kicked me rather viciously under the table.
That'll make it better.
Your legs are long.
Well, it depends which one.
Yeah, it's probably the
Το αριστερό του πόδι.
Let's not get into
Είμαι
which
και εγώ
leg is
πόντιος.
which.
Ένα 8πόντιος.
Are you
And I
Pontian?
hear that they have different
Are you
sized legs.
Pontian? Is this true?
My papu from
So
Kios.
welcome to the Pondcast.
The Pond.
My
You've
name
used
is
that before.
Pond, Rosso Pond. Please continue.
Thank you, because one thing I think is difficult for young people in any sort of organised space is understanding the processes behind it, you know?
No, I understand the processes. What do you bring? What do you want
Just saying
the
thank you because I have
GOCMB
to...
do,
Okay.
which they are not
Oh,
doing
sure.
now?
Sure. Well, we say, well, that's not always true, that we're sort of in a crisis for young people, getting young people involved.
Mm-hmm.
I know so many young people who are amazing, talented, cool.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I've never met any amazing
Yeah,
young
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Have you met any amazing young people?
A few.
Good God.
Yeah, you'd know heaps, actually. This is really relevant to what you're sort of doing.
No, it's I think the biggest challenge, and I know where Dean's coming from, has
I
been.
don't.
Yeah. Quite funnily enough, this time I know where you're coming from. Is how is it that, and you mentioned engaging young people, and I think that is, if I was to actually be somewhat critical, I would say that the Greek community, for all its good intentions, has in this area has not hit the mark as often as it probably should have. Not without trying, of course, but just trying to find that right way of engaging those young people and getting them a little more involved. And you've already mentioned how many of them have got preconceived negative ideas of the organised community, and I suppose how the question, of course, is going back to what Dean said: is how do you see yourself in the role in the community, being able to break those barriers down?
Well, inevitably, like with anyone, we bring our circle, our version of the story, our networks attached. And like I said, I think I'm pretty lucky to have been involved like in an organised capacity in the youth space for long enough now to sort of get to know the right people, off in that corner doing those amazing things, off in that corner doing those amazing things, off in that corner doing those amazing things. They're not often cross-talking, which is one interesting thing I think I can bring, a bit more cross-talk between those people, and also talk up, because a lot of the things that the GOCMB is taking care of are very high level, but sometimes, I think maybe a bit more needs to be done on the ground level, and that, not dismissing at all anyone that's involved in there and any of the things that they're sort of working on, obviously, but like, I still am on the ground level because that's exactly where I've come from, and I'm connected to all these young people.
It's true, they haven't let him go up to the first floor in the lift yet. You have to earn your keep before. You need to prove yourself. Go through the initiation ceremony. I think you're still on the mezzanine.
The mezzanine, yes, the mezzanine level.
The first floor is breathtaking. I've been there.
Yeah, it's cool. And that's where, see, it's that. Like, you guys know about all these things. You know about the history of the Greek community, the resources that are available, the people doing stuff, and young people just aren't involved in that conversation because it doesn't really revolve around
Why
them.
should young people involve themselves in the history of the Greek community?
Why?
And yeah, so there's a philosophical note to it and like a practical one. If they want a practical one, well, the Greek community gives them pathways, connections, resources to do things and bring things to life in their own life that aren't possible elsewhere. Like, I realised at university the things that were possible through the Greek club were not possible anywhere else. And that's why...
Really?
Absolutely,
Like
Pete.
what?
Well, we would drive a suvla onto... So this is my dad...
See, we're
It's
talking about the real stuff
Hook, it's the hook, you know?
Son of a butcher. That's right.
Yeah. So my dad, when he was a lot younger, used to make his own sort of suvlas and stuff like that. So we had this massive one from home, and we chucked it on our trailer.
My souffle is bigger than yours. Don't forget that.
I'm sure.
As for Pete's, off the charts.
that's
Off the charts.
Go on.
Yeah, like through the scale of events we wanted to run, through the ideas that we had, which are so colourful and passionate as we know, that's one thing. We were given special sort of access at uni. We were able to drive onto South Lawn, drop the things off, 8 o'clock in the morning, start cooking, have fire on campus that other people couldn't
And do
do.
you feel that's because you're Greek?
I think because, well, one, the things we can put on display are more authentic, are more sort of thought out. These are things that have come from our sort of real culture and traditions. We're not, it's not, what am I trying to say? It trumps the Bunnings sausage barbecues at uni. We do a lot of things with a lot more colour, flavour, intent, passion, and that's why I think Greek Club was crazy. It was next level, and I think that is because it is inevitably, no matter how much we try and separate it from ourselves personally, like it's intertwined with us intimately. It's a personal part of us, whereas the business club really isn't, or the commerce society rather. They used to get heaps of people come to their events, but I feel like the connection was so superficial. Like, what are you going to go do there?
How many members were at the Greek Club at Melbourne Uni during your tenure?
So in my second year was probably the best year because we were doing pretty well, and obviously you start the year with a bang, you learn and continuity, blah blah blah. I think we got close to 500 people.
That's massive.
It is
huge.
I remember in my time, it was a great thing.
The Sasha Pete era, or is this
Sasha Pete era?
Yeah, because I've had this
we
chat.
still talk about the Sasha Pete era. Sasha Pete coined the great phrase, sit on your eggs, kate salgasu, and Nugas is for lovers. Very important. We had it made into bumper stickers. He invented the concept of the windmill. I can't reveal what that is. No one speaks of the windmills, but those of you who watch will know what the windmill is. We're still scarred for life about the windmills. But also, I mean, the whole idea of being in the quad there, and Sasha Pete would come out at lunchtime with draped in the Greek flag, and then everyone would just congregate around because there was that real sense of belonging. Now, this was a very, very long time ago in my experience when I was at Melbourne Uni, which was in between 95 to 99. And my question, so you were probably, had you been born by then?
98 I was born.
98 you were born. So I went to uni before you were born. And if I did go to uni at all. And the question is this. I mean, we had that real sense of belonging. We were obviously different generation from you guys. Do you think that the Greek origin students at Melbourne Uni in your time, which wasn't that long ago, still had that need and sense of belonging?
Very much so. And I think, it manifests differently for different people. Wearing the Greek flag, it's another hook. Works for some, doesn't work for others. There are definitely kids that sort of, again, push away a little bit because it's a bit too much. I remember, actually, my first interaction with the Greek club, or the first I sort of heard of them, because first year I was studying Italian, as I sort of told you guys, so I wasn't as involved intimately with what the Greeks were doing. I was helping the Italians out every now and again. And there was this girl involved at the Art Society. So MAS is one of the bigger clubs on campus, does heaps of stuff, and she's Greek, like Greek background and all that. And I sort of asked her, do you hang out with the Greeks at all? Like, what are they doing? Like, what's the club going on? And she's like, no way, man. Like, too loud, too whatever. Not
Too
for me.
loud?
Too loud.
Well,
Who would have
Greeks.
thought? Who would
Greeks
have
too
thought?
loud.
Who would have thought?
So
Racist.
for some, like, again, it's a hit or miss thing, but there are so many people that have come from very different places around Melbourne, different high schools, and like in my high school, there are 4 of us that went to Melbourne, not too many others. I know a lot of the private schools, that sort of bigger groups tend to come together. They have already established sort of social networks, but a lot of people hanging out for connection. And I think we obviously have this inherent kinship, which I think will never sort of die out. It'll change, but we have an inherent kinship that sort of appeals to people. So they may sort of come a bit sort of, come to the club, test out the waters. If they're received the right way or not, like that is the decider, you know what I mean? And I think we received in our time people really well. We sort of brought them in, and my role at the barbecues, here, like a little analogy, was always to sort of feed people, like it was always working hard to feed others, to sort of foster connection, to sort of make them talk together and these do that and whatever. And if they're keen, if you like what's going on, come help us at the next one. It was always about that.
So my question to you is this. I lived through that experience. You come generation later, relive basically the same experience that I had, which shows the longevity of the club. But then the question is this. These people start uni, they attend the barbecues, they have that sense of belonging, they graduate, they get jobs, they get married, they do all these things. What happens to them after that in terms of their involvement with that Greekness?
I've not broken it down statistically, but obviously they go in all sorts of directions, myriad directions.
Is there any follow-through between... Do you find that the Greek uni clubs, or Nugas, which was the Melbourne Uni Club is an affiliate of, is there a feeder from that into the organised Greek community, or not so much?
So it's obviously a leading question because there's not, and I think we say that...
I don't know anything.
You do.
I went directly from the those organisations into the organised community, so my time was a bit different.
Yes, but I also think you're a little bit different, and you would have taken... Yeah.
How am I supposed to take that, Ms. Enfant?
In the sense that...
In the worst possible way.
Thanks.
People are so... and I even see that...
Otherwise.
I even see that now. Like, people that haven't done organised stuff before have, like... sort of no concept of how things sort of run, and that's not a criticism. It's just there's a lot of hesitancy. But I think if you have a brain and you're a bit of passion, everyone's capable of doing these organised things. People just don't know that. So I think early exposure is really important for those kind of people. So I imagine you were probably exposed early. You were probably involved.
Of having a brain.
And again, it goes back to accessibility and awareness. Melbourne Uni, we were doing a lot of events on campus, but sort of in our time was probably the first time in a while we thought, we can expand this outwards. We can connect with other people, not only in time, before, like previous members and after,
Does
but
that
even
include
physically.
members of the so-called Skopjean community? And I refer to a photo which circulates online showing members of the Greek Uni Club taking photos with the Skopjean Club.
That's not
you
true.
want to talk about
That's
that?
not true.
What
Yeah,
exactly
no, sure, I
happened
can
there?
tell you.
Only because that's been circulating Facebook for yonks. And people have raised to our attention. They said, the people from the Melbourne Uni Club
It
are
always
traitors.
comes up every so often.
Because
you know this guy's-
they took
yeah.
a photo with the members of the Skopjan Club, and what the hell is this? So talk to us about that.
That's totally false. Like, that's not even true.
So what happened?
So I guess, there are newspaper articles telling us about this person who raises these concerns, and I'll let you make your own mind up if you
what
read
happened?
them. Yeah, so it has nothing to do with the Skopjan Club. We, for a while, were approaching the uni to try and sort of have talks about it, about using certain symbols and what it means and blah, blah, blah. That didn't really go anywhere, so we exhausted the formal channels, and we sort of left it at that. We tried for quite a while. The Greek Club couldn't do much because, I guess, anyway, that sort of stuff doesn't happen very easily at uni anymore. The photo you're talking to was actually with a Turkish friend of mine. Yeah, I have a Turkish friend, Sumi. Yeah.
Okay.
He's a really nice guy, and we actually study medicine together now, like we're in the same cohort, different hospitals. But before in undergrad, we used to sort of come across each other in science classes, whatever. And funnily enough, this kid has massive interest for the Greek culture, all the rest of it. Is very...
Look, you don't have to justify him to us. I mean, I have really weird
you're asking for context there.
Some of my friends are really questionable. You're looking at one right here. That's right. And he asks me to use the word friend in quotations whenever I refer to him as such.
Yeah. And even that's taking it too far.
Okay, so you got a Turkish friend, and you guys took a photo together.
He was literally involved in the club for 1 year.
That's about it, yeah?
And we were... Well, no,
Because I'm getting bored now, that's why.
Yeah, we've got to let Peter start talking about us.
No, I don't want to start talking. I prefer if us two...
So we're at an international...
It's the KK show today.
Yeah,
absolutely.
we're in an international sort of clubs fair,
Yeah.
and my friend wanted to take a photo with me just to show goodwill and that. I mean, we're
And
friends.
took a photo.
Yeah, he took a photo, put it up. Thereafter, he moved on from the club, and
You weren't sweating at the time, were you? Because
No,
of
it was
your
cool.
Falkland Islands thing, and you couldn't sweat.
Wait, what?
And you were actually at Pizza Express in Woking.
It's a Prince Andrew thing
And
reference.
it's all right, you're too young to
Oh, the
understand.
sweating. Oh, I don't sweat. Yeah.
Now, okay, so
Yeah.
all that happened and nothing to see here. Moving right along. Question. I first met you and became aware of your existence at a youth forum at the Greek community, and you were talking about murals, and you wanted to splash this mural across the walls, unsuspecting walls of your hometown of Yarraville. And that happened.
Did we meet there? I'm pretty sure we met at one of the wreath-laying ceremonies.
I
for
have
the
a really
Pontian
poor
genocide,
memory.
So.
Talk to us about this mural, which is now festooning Maria Stoyanis' pharmacy in Yarraville.
Yeah, so it's titled Yarraville's Hidden Hellenism. And again, you guys can probably grasp what that means, but what we tried to do was retell forgotten stories. This time, or that time rather, we decided to interpret them through ancient symbols. We're trying to go for the hook, hook people in with these symbols that they'll recognize, big artistic value, funnel it to the stories in concept. I mean, it was a great project. We learnt so much about it. The artist we engaged, Rezio, Anthony, I don't know if I was supposed to say that, but amazing guy, had never really painted anything Greek inspired before, so we took him on that journey and really gave him a chance to connect with his own version of the events.
So
You're going to say something, yeah. You're going to say something.
Talk us through the process. I mean, well, obviously, Pete will use his artistic skills to
I'll direct my conversation.
upload a picture of this this mural, which is an interesting mural. Explain the symbolism of the mural. You got some ancient motifs there. What story do they tell?
Yeah, so I guess Yarraville's Hellenic identity, or the past, is populated by lots of cafes, very typical. But not only for the Greeks. I hear that a lot of people would frequent them. It was a great portal of entry into our world, literally. The other one is obviously the theatre. The theatre is a pretty
That's the Sun Theatre, which
important
was
story.
operated by Panayotis Yanoudis.
That was good. Yep, in the 60s, 70s, and closed, I think, just before the 80s, or maybe early 80s. So not a bit about the story there, but not a lot of people do, So it's hidden because it's just beneath the surface, but it's there, The Sun Theatre is still there, but people just don't know that this happened. So we've decided to interpret that through Thalia, who we know as the goddess of comedy. I didn't mention before, but these sort of cafes, the festivities, all these sorts of things.
Because every single Thalia I know is really serious and angst-ridden, Pete.
Really?
I've never met a funny
I
Thalia.
don't think I've met one Thalia.
I'll introduce you to a few. I know
except for the mixed Aboriginal Greek singer that sang at the
she's
She was a
brilliant. She's
Thalia.
awesome.
Cool.
But I wouldn't call her the goddess of comedy.
Definitely not.
No.
No.
So you've got this mural, and you've got all these symbols, and you've got Thalia to represent the Sun Theatre. What else you got?
So there's Dionysus, who celebrates, like I said before, the cafes, the festivities, all that sort of stuff, the social stuff that acted as a portal of entry.
Demetrius.
That's pretty funny, actually.
Όχι τρεις, γιατί αυτός δεν πίνει καφέ. Continue.
And our last one was Hermes, who I get it has many sort of connotations as a god, but we sort of tried to go for, it's a post office pharmacy, so there's the Takidromo, the messenger, but he's obviously the one who protects the traveller. So it says a bit more about the migration journey more broadly.
So you saved it there.
Yeah, saved it there, and I guess it shows. Like it was a first project of ours. I mean, as you described to me,
when you say ours, this is the thing. I mean, this was a project which wasn't done under any organised community.
It kind of was, yeah.
Umbrella. This was you saying, I want to put this mural. And you went out there and you sold the concept of the mural to as many people as possible, including me. we had a meeting and you sold the concept to me. And I thought, yeah, this makes sense sort of in its own way. It has its own logic and it's great. And you made this happen. And yes, you had people who helped you along the way and supported you, but it was you on your own. And if you drive past that pharmacy now, that's there. And I'll ask you two questions. The first question is, what are the responses now to the mural? You went to the trouble of doing this mural. You got council support and funding, which was amazing. You got community funding and support. And the mural's up on the wall. It's been up on the wall for about a year and a bit now.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the effect that has on people? Can you measure it? What have people told you that the effect of it is?
Well, I get a very close look at the wall because we live not far at all. So it's great. I get to see people go past, and especially at the beginning, there's a little bit of tagging, some graffiti, but nothing really meaningful. It gave people a reason to stop and stare and think. You know, it's not entirely complete in that it doesn't fully tell its own story. We want to do QR codes on the base to scan and to tell more. We want a plaque for information purposes, but like the look on people's face to see young kids putting something together, making an effort, to tell a story has been great. The local primary school is diagonally across the road. We've had so much outreach from those guys to say, like, well done, good job. And we have the potential to turn it into an educational destination in the future, to tell kids about the local multicultural history. So these are all like amazing positive things.
All right, question.
Yeah.
I go to Lonsdale Street in the city every Saturday, drop my kids off at the community Greek school, which you are running. So actually runs as well. And then I go for my risogalo down at International Cakes. Having finished my risogalo, I walk down Lonsdale Street and I see on Lonsdale Street, down at my feet, the path which has got the meander key.
Yeah.
And I see the meander symbol on those barriers that shield you from the road. And I also, on occasion, go past that Alexander the Great plaque, tombstone, put it what you will. And even though it hasn't been there for very long, you can't read the writing. It's fainted.
Yeah,
it's faded because that's the quality of stuff that gets sent from Greece. And my question is this: there is no longer a Greek presence there, a measurable Greek presence. They're just memories, like Yarraville. And I walk past and I say, okay, I remember when this place was buzzing, and I remember around about the time you were born when you couldn't get into Medallion, A, because of the smoke, it was horrible, B, because all the seats were taken because it was just so vibrant and full of people. Now that's all gone. It's just the memory. And these are sad little markers along the way to make me feel that I'm old. Yeah? And to measure my own loss. And my kids walk past, and unless I explain to them the fact that, in large quantities, it means nothing to them. So my question is this. As the Yarraville community, which is still pretty strong, but as you say, unorganised formally, as that community gets older, disperses, not everyone can afford to live in Yarraville. The younger people move out. They go Point Cook, they go here, they go there, they go wherever they can. Yeah. What's the point? Is it, in actual fact, a hieroglyph in a pyramid, a tombstone, a marker to say, hey guys, we were once here, but we're not anymore? What is it?
Tough question. But see, I'll argue there, as long as these people are here, and I say these predominantly about like the first generation, the people that set up this community, I think they deserve it, In medicine, sort of my day thing, I'm starting to become a doctor. I'm doing a medical degree.
Yeah, you sort of mentioned that.
Yeah, I sort of mentioned it. I think.
What kind of doctor? Are you specialise in anything? Because
I'll let you guess that. I'd like to ask you. Yeah,
I'm fascinated in skin diseases. The glorious and the goriest skin disease, the better. I love them. Psoriasis, I'm an authority on.
Thoracic surgeon is my guess because I like saying the word thoracic.
It's a pretty good word.
Thought I guess. Well, I guess this is a large part of why I'm doing what I'm doing in the community, and people ask me why. It's because I'm trying.
He wants to heal the Greek community because
not just that.
Like Asclepius.
Not just that.
We will sleep at his temple, and he will resurrect the Greek community. I'm onto you.
I think
I'm onto you.
For me, it's more about again who I want to be in the community more broadly, like what I want to offer. And yeah, my perception of health is not just pharmaco, not just treatment. Think about this, at every hospital, I think the healthcare should be measured obviously by the quality of treatment, but also the quality of experience, you know. Because if you get all the right medicines, but you don't really feel right, or someone doesn't speak your language, or there's no connection, it's lonely, I think that's a bit of a loss, you know.
Then you're not a valued customer, and then you don't get to fill out the survey.
Well, if that happens, I think I've lost.
Could you measure these kind of outcomes, translate that measure of looking at your career to the Greek community, and talk about the physical treatment of people plus the psychological experience of being within the community? Do you think there's a correlation between these two fields in that respect?
In some way, I'm trying to. I sort of mentioned before that my sort of resolution to be a bit more sort of meaningful in the lives of elderly around me and make them feel special, you know, whilst they can, because I think they deserve it. And that is partly
encourages them in my experience.
Say it again.
It only encourages them in my
Encourages
experience.
what?
You want to tone that down.
What does?
The elderly.
I think they deserve it, you know.
Okay.
And that's probably because
you don't know the stories.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's part of the romance that I talk about. You know, looking back on them, obviously they're a little bit different to what they used to be. A lot of them are a lot more mellowed out, and
They're old.
Yeah, they're old. You know, they can't chase you around or.
Oh, they can.
Although they can, but
They're quite wily.
I think regardless, you know, like the fact that this is still here, they deserve a certain level of respect, attention. You know, what I mean, like to sort of validate what they sort of went through. And a lot of people that have gone through that firsthand don't realise how special it is because it's their own experience. But I think the fact that I've always been reflecting on it and saying, wow, how is that possible? How is that possible that Australia was so different, things were so different, your life was so different? I think that's what I'm trying to draw attention to. And again, yes, it adds value, Dean, for people that are here because, I mean, we can only understand how good certain things are or what work needs to be done when we can compare to how things were, you know? And looking back at the difficulties of these people's lives or sort of what they went through, I think is immensely humbling for me and should be and can be for a lot of other people.
Question 2, based on that. You've got this amazing mural in Yarraville, which you did on your own. You did on your own. It was your initiative. It was your baby. You went out and did it.
Sure.
That was it. Now you're looking to do one in Footscray, I understand. Talk to me about Footscray. Why Footscray and what do we want to do there?
So you were about to ask before, I guess, how do you go about doing something like this? And
No, I want to know why you're doing it in Footscray.
Yeah, and that's kind of where there's a component of urgency and a component of opportunity as well.
Okay.
As anything, because I think one useful thing maybe we can talk about later is like, how do you decide what we work on next? That's such a difficult thing, you know, because obviously things at different levels of importance to different people. But the wall came up. The wall came up in some sort of community outreach that I was doing. Someone said, hey, we have a space. Let's see if you can do something. And we'll give you this okay and whatever.
Who are the people?
Like there's no issue, but like it's a guy who sort of lived locally.
Okay, and he's
yeah, and owns one of the stores. Yeah, and
fantastic.
Not that he'll be involved, but he said that you guys can do something here and enjoy the overall
paint the wall. It's gonna be great. You're gonna love it. It's a great wall.
Now, this wall.
Yeah.
What are we going to paint on it?
So in a similar sort of trend, we want to call it Footscray's hidden Hellenism because we're trying to unearth sort of gems, iconic moments, reminders.
FHH. Nice.
FHH.
Footscray's hidden Hellenism.
Sure.
Sounds like some sort of drug there.
Yeah.
Well, he is the Geriatric.
And
it's also a fashion label.
we want to, because I think we can
Google
improve
it.
on the hidden Hellenism sort of concept, you know, like the ancient sort of symbols were great, artistic, amazing, but I think maybe putting a bit more intimacy in there will make the connection a lot more obvious to what we're trying to tell the story.
So how, Richard Mercer voice? So Dean.
Love some dedications? Or?
Indeed. How will you make it more intimate?
Well, community projects are all about the community, you know, and I was there today. I was supposed to be at uni, but I was there today. You know, I went for a big walk and I sort of ended up in Footscray because, you know, whenever I start thinking about these things, it's sort of always in my mind. I'm always sort of reworking the idea. So I went to Footscray. I was consulting the local traders, you know, and one of them is a really passionate guy. So it's in a laneway, and this laneway used to be blocked off. There were no sort of stores there, but in the last couple of years, they were refurbed, and there's 3 shop fronts now on one side of the lane. And one's a really popular cafe, Counterweight, in Footscray. They play vinyls, they do lots of stuff. They're pretty funky guys. They're pretty cool. And he's been wanting to do something there for ages. So I think it's only fair that we sort of meet in the middle, or I hear this guy out, you know. Like, it's all local with this one. And I don't say that just to sort of, you know, put a marketing spin on it or sort of make people more likely to support it. Like, it's, like I'm trying to be real about what I'm espousing. So, yeah, last week, 2 weeks ago, I took Thomas Papadopoulos, Thomas, who's a famous musician from the past and restaurateur locally there, and Fred Madden, who's the former mayor, who saw the Greek community in its peak. He used to go to a Yarraville Glory Soccer Club, used to watch the the games, and whenever there was like a contested thing, he used to say Footscray, you know, like this guy's saying Footscray, and everyone started laughing. He's a part of the community. So, yeah, I'm just trying to be real about the whole process, consulting people for the...
And what will actually be put on there? Haven't we decided that yet?
Yeah, well, we're in a consultation phase now, you know, because we haven't quite secured anything officially from the council.
Okay, so it's still in the...
It's on the works, yeah, it's in the works, but...
All right, but we can expect to have a mural which has some type of meaning for the Greek community.
Absolutely, because...
All right. Question.
Yeah.
Question. That's great. You, again, are doing this on your own initiative, marshalling the forces of the community as you see them in order to provide an interpretation to send a message that you want to send.
Sure.
Okay? So why do we need the organised Greek community? You can do this on your own. Anyone can do this on your own. If anything, your initiative, the way that you go about consulting with this unofficial community, in the way that you draw these disparate stands together in order to achieve this mural, this statement, this, if you like, manifesto of identity, according to you, actually negates the need for an organised community altogether. It's more of an anarchistic paradigm.
Oh, can't give me that. Come on, I'm sweating here. It's
And
too
the
hot. The air
question-
conditioner needs to be
and the
higher there.
question
If you can
is-
ask me a question like that, I never set the
That's
air
the
condition.
question. Why do I need an organised community when I have you?
Well, one, it's this isn't sustainable for me, Dean. This isn't sustainable for anyone. And
You're
I think,
unsustainable. He's unsustainable.
yeah, radioactive.
You've
You
heard
know
of
what I
him.
mean? Radioactive. But no, the truth is, like, and not to sort of blow air into my own balloon, but I don't see many other people who've
Fuskas.
just gone Fuskas. That was really good, bro.
Thanks.
I don't see many other people who just, you know, taking this deep dive that I have on my own volition.
I don't either. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, and that's where, like, we need to support people through that journey, Dean. Like, I sort of came through on a very high bar entry. I'm sort of jumping into these spaces that I don't always...
So do you feel that in terms of your affiliation to the Greek community, the Greek Orthodox community of Melbourne, Victoria, are you affiliated to another community or just that one?
So we have our group, which is the Greek Youth Generator.
Okay, your Greek Youth Generator, which for me is like a family planning clinic. Generate Greek youth. It's great. Apart from that, which really is not affiliated to the Greek community per se, it's just a little group that you've created. It's a vehicle for you to further your passions along that line. It's driven by you and your disciples. You are the guru. Now, but you're a member of the Greek community. Why do you feel that your membership and your boardship of the Greek community enables you to identify people who have similar yearnings and to make that happen for them?
Yep.
Why?
Yeah, I do. Because, again, I know these people doing their own thing in little silos across Melbourne. And if any organisation is supposed to bring those together, I really believe it is the Greek community. And I see that on levels that people that aren't involved don't see that. So I guess I'm asking some people to take my sort of word for it. But in other ways, we'll show you. Like, we will show that.
Well,
And
I
it's-
think the fact that you were endorsed by both tickets in the elections shows what esteem the Greek community in general holds your work in. So I think that speaks for itself.
Thank you.
It's not only how you see it, but it's also how you are seen by others, I think, which is important. And I think that what you're doing is very important. So let me ask you this question then. You mentioned a couple of words. You mentioned the word urgency. You mentioned the word loss. You mentioned the word romantic. And you mentioned the word a lot past and paying homage to the elderly and that they deserve to have these murals. So the question is this. Okay, we understand the past. As Greeks, we are burdened by the past. We're always referring to our ancient ancestors and what they would have thought and their legacy. But that is the past. And we're living in the now. And we've got challenges for the future. Do you think that if you like, immoderate focus on the past retards our progression, our ability to evolve and move forward and address the challenges? Do you think that we are being held back by our past?
Depends on the dialogue surrounding it, you know.
All right,
And
tell
this
us
is what
about
I
that.
could have done a barbecue at Melbourne Uni and carried it out in the most hectic or close-minded way. We could have just done it and left it at that. But there are always things attached. You put people in a room, they'll start talking, and if you feed things in there, it'll inspire you, planting seeds. And this mural is another hook. I'm trying to hook people into this broader space.
But you're hooking into them by referring to the past. So the question is, okay, I'm not interested in the past. I'm interested in what I'm doing now, in my experience as a Greek now.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking hypothetically.
that's
I'm
cool.
obsessed with the past. You should see my diaries. Good God.
Or this show.
This show.
You read them, didn't you? So,
Yeah, no,
But-
yeah.
Is the past a burden? Does it stop us from moving forward if we constantly have to look over our shoulders and bear the bones of our ancestors on our shoulders like Lefkalion and Pira did after the flood?
Depends how you take it. Again, like my spin is pretty positive, and I think the way we go about our projects, they are cool first and sort of Greek historical second. I think I'm really just trying to bring people into this space so they can take their own journey. And I know I keep saying that, but that really is the whole idea, just trying to promote awareness of the whole multicultural space. Because how am I supposed to speak for someone, or how am I supposed to create a project that appeals to people with mixed heritage? We sort of mentioned that. How am I supposed to do it? I can't. They are supposed to do it. So I think I just need to empower them with a proof of concept, because if they come to me with a mural idea, we can do it together, or at least passion, you know. Someone
so
that's
the idea is that it is upon each person to splatter the outcome of their existential yearnings upon the walls of Melbourne.
Or maybe, why not, you know? Because it is an integral part of our identity here, but I don't see the multicultural elements much in our streetscape. And I guess I've seen a lot of it because I'm researching and I'm doing whatever.
I think you've hit the nail on the head when you use the word identity. And I think that's one.
There's no you in identity, there's only an I.
It's two eyes.
Just like there's a you in the Ukraine, which is our next topic, but not me crane, which is what Putin wants to do, or my crane. Continue, please.
So I think that identity is the huge one. So you've got some experience within the medical field. I would say, I would ask you one question.
Please.
With regards to mental health, how do you find that being with regards to an issue with people of your generation?
Okay, again, just as soon as you asked that, I was just going to reflect on sort of something that I recently went through at the hospital. I was actually doing age psychiatry, so relating to old people. Do you want me to talk about that, or should I leave that maybe?
What I want to
young people.
It's the reason why I want to say I want to focus on young people is that I have my own theory as to the benefits of educating our young with regards to our identity and what role identity basically plays in the establishment and facilitation of mental health. So, but I really wanted to get your perspective on things. I had a conversation, and I think we've discussed this once, but I've had a conversation once with a psychiatrist, and he was telling me it was to do with a relative of mine, and I asked, well, we had very similar upbringings, but why is it that he's plagued with all these issues while I'm not? And he asked me 2 or 3 questions, and it was to do with my past, what my beliefs were, and what have you. But he's found that, that I've had a very strong connection with my culture, and he basically said that you got to think of life as being these rapids, and you're on a raft, and you just need to keep that raft afloat. So you use anchors in order to basically do that. Yeah. And he said that a strong sense of identity, a strong sense of community are huge anchors that many people just do not have. And I find that with parents, people of our generation now and even beforehand, not giving the sort of respect or the sort of influence on community that they should have perhaps, meant that their kids actually didn't appreciate it as much. And then now we're seeing a bit of a gap. And I think that they're trying to find things to latch onto. Things, and I think Dean mentioned a sense of belonging.
Yeah, sure.
You've noticed that. And I think that is definitely what's missing from the conversation within our community. We do not talk at all about how just having a community and bringing young people in would help them out psychologically as well as culturally and what have you.
It's hard to talk about these things because again, it's so high level and it's often very philosophical and theoretical, and your average person who doesn't know much isn't going to engage with that. But I totally agree with you, Peter, that that's true. Giving people a grounding, at least a fuller understanding of where they've come from and why. After that, they can make their own decisions, absolutely. But if people are trying to look back and it's nebulous, of course they're going to feel nebulous and sort of lost in it all. So
I think
100%.
It has also to do with the evolving manner in which society recreates itself. It made sense 50 years ago, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, for people to want to mix together to the close and intimate level that they did as Greeks, but even within the broader community. With the advent of technology, internet, the human need to communicate is breaking down. And I don't think the Greek community is taking that into effect, into account.
Right.
The fact that people no longer have the need to go out and relate to each other as Greeks. I found that when I was at uni. I'll run into people who were Greek, and like with you, there weren't many Greeks at Melbourne Uni, or at least you identify later the crypto Greeks, and you think, no way that you're Greek.
Crypto Greek, that's mad.
There was one guy, and he was studying law, and I studied law for my sins. Mate, you're Greek. I can't believe it. Looks at me. My parents are Greek. This guy ends up trying to have a position in the Greek community, and he makes his appearance once in a while. But I'll never forget that. My parents are Greek.
There you
And
go.
just the psychological distance
Yeah.
he put between me and him at the time when I was reaching out for that connection.
yeah,
And I
reaching
find that interesting because I have that connection. I mean, whenever I hear someone speaking Greek, my natural reaction is, you're Greek! Even though like there's hundreds of thousands of
Yeah,
us
it's
here
cool.
there. But I don't find that many people have that, my generation and younger, all the time. It's a hit and miss.
Well, that's where, again, the origin of our community, the reason why it had to be so strong was for survival, you know, and for it to thrive.
That's also because they didn't have the language or the class or the social
Exactly
ability
right.
to mix with
Exactly
everybody
right.
else. They weren't allowed to. It was a more racist time. Now, those barriers don't exist per se. You can go and mix with anyone. No one stops you.
And now people have to make a very conscious effort, I believe, to re-engage with the sort of Greek narrative in their life. And that's why, again, just to sort of tie it in, we're trying to make that more accessible, more easy. That's why the hook is so important. Hook, you know, like bring them back into the space, let them sample it, let them see bits about it. It's true. I mean, your mate, old mate, is right to some extent. His parents were Greek in the sense that they were born there, they came over. He is different, you know.
But then again, the minute that he goes out into the mainstream, the first thing I tell him is, you're Greek.
True.
You know? So it's complex, isn't
Never
it?
changed his name, Dean?
No, he didn't.
No?
He didn't change his name.
Didn't chop off a few syllables
No,
at the end?
very, very proud of his very, very Greek name, first and second, not like me
Oh, cool.
and Dean, the sellouts.
Yeah,
who
it was
both
always
Καλά, εγώ είμαι
Dean.
Κωνσταντίνος.
Are you Dean?
Yeah, no, I'm Konstantinos.
Στα χαρτιά, I'm not, I'm Dean.
Wow, sellout.
Massively Dean.
I thought about reversing the bastardization of my name. I should be Panayotis Stevenson.
That's
No,
funny.
you need to be Panjos because you are Pontian. You're an eighth Pontian, so you have to Pontianize an eighth of your
An
name.
eighth of the... Yeah, choose 3 or 4
So from
letters.
It's pretty long.
From
It's-
Kostikas, you'll have to be Tikas. Tikas Kotsianis. I think that's cool.
Right. So, I do want to actually discuss Ukraine.
The Ukraine. You got an opinion about the Ukraine, Dean?
Not
Kostikas?
Not really, but this is again where I don't feel so
I
much.
invite you onto this show. Actually, I didn't invite you. Kind of invited yourself. Who
Yeah,
invited
okay.
this guy on the show? And you've got no opinion about the
I
Ukraine.
invited him.
You invited him?
I did, of course.
I didn't get the
I
memo.
told you we
Big
need to
mistake.
bring
I never
the,
read the attachments.
the age thing down.
That's right. It was about the age. You're
Yeah.
just a token young guy on the show.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
That's all right. I mean, again, it's what you make of it. So I feel like
Yeah.
I've said some pretty cool things. And I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
really mind.
Very cool.
Give me
Very
this
cool.
thing sense of
Unlike
deja vu.
certain-
Sellouts.
yeah.
All right, let's talk about the Ukraine.
Let's
He can
talk
listen and learn something.
Let's
What are we going to talk about the Ukraine? What about it?
I want to talk about the Greek community in the Ukraine.
Greek community in Ukraine. You will be surprised to know, which you already know, Dean, that there are about 200,000 people who claim to be Greek in the Ukraine, of which 150,000 are living in the Donbass region, which is the source of the conflict, and the rest spread around the country. Yeah, that's true. They've been there, some of them, since ancient times, because you know the ancient Greeks, the first colonies were in Asia Minor, in the Middle East, and then they went up north. Why? North was great. Lots of plains for growing wheat, trading links, and it was considered the best place in the world, a place of security, a haven, and I mean, one of the major cities, Olvia, means a lovely place. And, you know, what was the last place to fall to the Ottomans? Greek land to fall to the Ottomans. Do you know this? Pop quiz. I'll do the popping sound, but I can't these days. I don't have any teeth because I'm old. No.
sorry.
It was in 14th
Peloponnese was not the last place to fall to the Turks. The Peloponnese is an insignificant dot on the map of Hellenism. The last place, the last Hellenic place to fall to the Ottomans was the Crimea.
Yeah.
The Principality
question.
of Theodoro, in
14
1475.
1475.
10 years after Mr. Fell. So imagine our experience as a Greek people is intertwined with the Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah,
and
for
that
sure.
whole-
Absolutely.
There's a lot of
from the beginning. And then, of course, after that, you get people running away from the Ottomans and they're going up there. I mean, those territories were conquered by the Ottomans, and Catherine the Great took them and deported all the Muslims, so the place was empty. So what does she do? She throws the gates open, says, any Greeks want to come here and live? I will rename all the towns after their original Greek names, which she did. That's why you get Kherson, Sevastopoli, Mariupoli, all these places. Simferopoli.
Mariupol was actually just a little after her, wasn't it? Like apparently they left, many of the Greeks left the Crimea, and then there was some sort of agreement.
The Greeks from the Crimea left because they were getting persecuted by the Turks, and they were led by the Metropolitan Ignatios to Mariupol.
Yes, that's
where they
right.
resettled, and there's a big statue of him in the town.
Yes.
I hope it's still there with everything that's going on. So they're in that region, and I mean, we always remember that the Filikieteria had its headquarters in Odessa.
Yeah.
Odessa, or as my Odessan hairdresser says, Odessa. And so the whole idea of the freedom of Greece was conceived in the area which is now the Ukraine, then the Russian Empire. So for us, the Ukraine is synonymous with freedom, bizarrely enough.
Yeah.
And then you get, for example, Pontian refugees leaving the various massacres, fleeing the massacres in Pondos and seeking refuge in the Ukraine. And then something really stupid happened, which was that the Bolsheviks took over, and in 1919, Venizelos thought he would send an army along with the French and the British to fight in the White Army to get rid of the Bolsheviks. And then when they lost dismally, because they didn't know where they were, what they were doing, the Bolsheviks took it out on the Greek inhabitants.
Yeah.
So it was a bit dumb. And then there was Stalin's purges in 37, the
yeah.
Geriatric Operatia, where they all got sent to Kazakhstan, and then they came back. So they've had a tough time.
Yeah.
Had a tough time. But
50,000 of
a
them died
very
then.
vibrant people. For example, the great playwright Anton Chekhov, he went to Greek school. He learned to chant in Greek because there's so many Greeks in the area where he was living, Taganrog.
There you go.
He hated Greek school. So Greek school, it's not culture specific.
Thank
Everyone
God he
hates
wasn't-
Greek school.
Thank God it was somebody else.
He talks about disinterested Greek teachers who are only teaching in order to get paid. Sound familiar? Nah. So we have this situation now where these people are getting killed.
Yeah, they are.
They're caught in the crossfire. The
Yeah.
problem with when you're an ethnic minority, mes enfants, the way we are, and you're in another country which they don't consider to be your own, and they is that you are considered with suspicion on both sides.
Is it true that Zelensky last year removed legally the right for the Greeks to be calling themselves a minority in the Ukraine?
I don't think it was that. I mean, there's a distinction between minorities and native minorities, and I think they're not considered native minorities, which is wrong considering that we've been there longer than the Russians have.
Absolutely.
The Russians didn't exist when we were there.
Yeah.
Actually, the Ukraine is the spot where we converted the Russians to Christianity and
Yeah.
gave them an alphabet. That's where they started learning about Byzantium. So it is that liminal space in which the transition from Greek to Russian takes place.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult one.
Yeah, I wasn't happy when I found that
It's
out.
a difficult one.
So
You have competing nationalisms.
yeah.
To a Greek, there is no difference between the Ukrainian and the Russian. It's like the same.
That is so true.
No, but
That
the
is
way,
so true.
because we've got a different way of looking at nationality. It's like saying that a Cypriot, there's a difference between a Cypriot and a Greek, or if a Pontian and a Greek. To us, you're all part of that same cultural continuum.
Yeah.
You speak generally the same language or a dialect thereof. What is a separate nationality? And it just shows how easily you can create
Yeah.
a separate nationality
True.
based on politics, geography.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But but Dean, I have actually spoken to many Greeks from the Ukraine.
he does. It's his hobby. He collects Greeks from the Ukraine.
Just have them in my little.
I collect throat singers from Mongolia.
That's great music. We should do a show on that.
I
one
can
day.
do it. I can do throat singing.
Yeah. Well, next time you bring in the litter again,
Oh, well, I'll do this.
and we'll
The oracle.
basically do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, many of them actually were quite adamant that, as far as they're concerned, they don't really care with regards to Ukraine, Russia, and like Gene said, like many of them don't really see a difference between both of them. Now, I can't speak for every single
Yeah, sure.
Ukrainian Greek that exists there, but one thing that they all say, and this goes without saying, I suppose, is that they just want peace so they don't have to live in bunkers. And yesterday, I received a message from Victoria, and I actually asked her what's going on, and she said like her village was bombed recently, and her parents were hiding in a bunker She knows that they have left the bunker, but she's not been able to get in contact with them. So it's a bloody scary time.
And what's the bloody point?
Yeah.
For me, anyone who starts a war is responsible for the death of children
Yeah.
is a criminal. And I don't think you have the right to occupy the moral high ground when you do this to people.
Yeah.
And that doesn't only include the warmonger, it includes the Western ones that
Yeah.
invade countries like Iraq,
Yeah.
Afghanistan for no reason, make a mess and then leave, and everything goes the way it was before.
Yeah, man.
The mess in Syria, the mess in Yemen.
Yeah.
I think that before you start wars, you need to be held into account. I mean, the whole idea about the Holocaust and the Second World War and the Korean War was that these conflicts were so bloody that every single measure had to be put in place to stop this from happening again.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, you had this great optimism in the 60s and 70s that things would get better and that society is evolving towards something better, which culminated in the fall of the Berlin Wall. And we thought, Francis Fukuyama famously, the end of history. History's played itself out. There's no capacity for future development. We've worked it all out. We haven't. We're going backwards.
Here we are.
We're going back to the bestial nature that scarred the 20th century. I mean, it just beggars belief. And yet here we are.
There is a very unique Greek culture in the Ukraine, and I really hope we're not seeing the end of it.
I found 3 interesting things about the Ukrainian Greek culture or / Russian because, as we said, it is a liminal space. 1, the language policy. Stalin and Lenin tried to do this thing where they tried to change the alphabet.
Yeah.
So there's 3 strands. 1 said, no, we want to speak the way they write in Greece.
Yep.
And the Bolsheviks didn't want that because they wanted to cut the ties and the ability for the Greeks of that area to communicate with the rest of Greece so they can be isolated. 2 was, we want to speak Pontian dialect. And then the question is which one, because there are several in the region. Do we speak Mariopolitica? Do we do the other ones? And the 3rd is, okay, we need to change the Greek alphabet and adapt it to the Pontian sound system. And they did that by introducing Russian letters. So where, for example, the U wouldn't be OU, it would just be U like the Russians. So you read these texts and it's really interesting the way they use them. So you had all these competing versions of communicating in Greek and what it is to be Greek that were trying to play themselves out. This was before the purge because after that you weren't allowed to speak Greek.
Yeah.
And then they resolve themselves because when the 90s come and the regime falls, well, then they just take the modern Greek as a standard.
Yeah. Probably the where things will go in the end anyway, down that path.
Depends.
That is one thing that I think we sort of speak about in my sort of small circles because, like,
Oh, you're still here, are you?
I'm around. You can edit this bit out if it doesn't sort of.
We won't.
Too
That'd be
much.
silly.
People's concept of nations, ethnicities, and stuff like that. I think young people, again, can't speak for everyone, but it's not a concept we spoken to much. Understanding that within a group, a nation, which is, for all intents and purposes, a constructed entity for legal, political sort of reasons, there is like an actual mix of people and ethnicity. And we were talking about this with a friend of mine where he's trying to go for his citizenship in Cyprus or Greece. I think it's for his Greek one. And he was just reflecting on how his grandparents' papers back in the day have like their nationality, which is was it called British colony of?
Yeah, it would have been British.
Yeah, like I get that much, but I can't remember what it was officially called. But then their ethnicity underneath, and I feel like that concept is one that not all young people are really familiar with on an actual level. We know that people come from different places, but we don't really mention ethnicity much anymore. Maybe because it's a hot topic or whatever. But
it gets a little complicated when you start mixing.
Yeah, it does. But I guess just knowing
What is
that
an ethnicity?
Here we go.
Ask, for example, Zlatko in Thomastown, who's married to Maria, who speaks Greek and also speaks Slavic, what their ethnicity is and how they negotiate that.
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
Yeah,
it is tough.
You ask the Vlachs who, when your back is turned, speak Vlach to each other, and you think, hang on, I don't know this language, and then I swear black and blue that they're Greek because they are. My grandfather was a Vlach. My grandmother could only write Greek with the Vlach alphabet. She couldn't write in Greek. Didn't go to Greek school. Went to Vlach school.
but if it's complex, it's nuanced, and like that. That's how
it is.
History,
complex
language, all these things, and that's
Absolutely.
how it's supposed to be. And I think
So do we celebrate that, or do we agree on the standard, considering that if we celebrate diversity too much, we'll lose touch of each other? That's a challenge, isn't it? What do we do about that?
Yeah,
I think the answer is we do nothing because all these dialects and different things are fading anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're tied to place. Once you take them out of a place, they don't last more than a generation.
Because they have to be organic in their purpose.
That's right.
And that's where, with the whole Greek thing, we have to provide reason, relevance to people's lives, or else it's not sustainable.
Very
you know?
good. So much.
Thank
Come
you.
full
Yeah.
circle.
That's right.
That's true. It's
Absolutely.
true.
I have to agree with you on principle, and I can't think of one smart-ass thing to say to refute you. I'm disappointed in myself. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. You can flagellate me
I was
later.
Italian.
No, it's actually Latin.
Yeah,
It's actually
my
love.
fault, yeah. But yeah, no, it's real. And I guess, for instance, we go around espousing that we need to speak more Greek, but here we're speaking English, so we're all a little bit...
No, that's for the
That's my
non-existent English.
No, it's not a...
because
And your
criticism.
Greek is actually amazing. And let me ask you this, because I'm going to be condescending, and I'm going to say that most
Dean sending.
most kids your age don't display the proficiency of Greek that you do. So the question is, how did you come by acquiring such a proficiency?
It's as we said before, language and all that sort of stuff is complex and nuanced. It's not textbook. It's not rigid. And obviously, I just try and fit it in wherever I can. We only spoke about a few things, Dean, in Greek, and I'm obviously pretty good at speaking about those things. So you got me on a sort of good topic.
But did you go to Greek school?
Bigger. But
Where'd you go?
So I went to Omiros and Altona North, predominantly. But I only went till year 9, you know. Yeah, I only went to year 9, and I probably could have done like, you know.
You didn't go further than year 9.
No,
and your Greek is that good.
Yeah.
How
Again,
many trips to Greece have you done?
4. I've been to Greece 4 times.
That's
twice when I was
bugger all.
younger, once sort of in between, and then one more recently as well.
Because you know everyone has this thing that going to Greece is the panacea. If you go to Greece, you will come back speaking brilliant Greek. It's garbage.
It improves.
But you know, you're
That happened with my Italian. That happened with my Italian because
Italian's
it's-
funny.
it's
When
an-
I went
it's
to Italy, and my Italian is pidgin Italian because I had an uncle who spoke
you
Italian.
speak Latin, and they're just like, we don't use that.
And he said, you know what? The people said that you're like one of those Aussie Italians that come over and can't speak Italian and try and make yourself understood. So I'm glad I fit in. It's great.
Yeah.
But you speak Greek at home with your parents or English?
I mean, a little bit, but it's not every sort of part of it's not part of every single conversation.
What
But it
part
doesn't
of
have
Greece
to
are
be.
your parents from?
Oh, I'm surprised we didn't lead with that because every other Greek
We
leads
know.
with that.
We
you know what I mean?
we always
question
end
for
the
Boys,
always
but them
ask.
are boys, sir.
boys.
Yarval. Oh, okay. So start with boys. Starting to sound like you know, man. Oh, I gotta tone it back. I gotta tone it back.
That's what happens after.
So
a while.
Dad-
Easy being me.
Dad is from Thessaloniki, Lagada.
You know the story
Like
about
that's the town.
Thessaloniki, how Thessaloniki
Let's
was
find
made?
out where his mother's from first.
No, it's not interesting. How was the city of Thessaloniki getting its name? Do you know this story?
Yes.
How?
The victory of Thessaly or something like that.
Garbage.
Thessaloniki.
Absolute garbage.
Isn't it something like that?
It's just why he asked these questions.
It's a setup. It's a trap. It's a
Alexander the Great's army was camped on a plain, and they were bored. So one guy snuck in his girlfriend, and her name was Nikki.
No.
And they were in the tent, and having discussed philosophy and nuances, and the physical and the practical, and everything to do with the Greek identity, exhausting that topic, they then turned their mind to Greek youth generation. And having turned their mind to Greek youth generation, he completed the task as was he was required to do so.
It's happening.
Splattered his manifesto upon the wall of her ardor, and then said Thessaloniki. And that's how it got its name.
Surprised you didn't work Ukraine in there somehow.
She was
We're
crying.
talking about Thessaloniki here.
You
Anyway,
cried.
continue. Dad's from
You cried.
Thessaloniki.
She was crying.
Yeah, I got
Dad's from Thessaloniki. Where's mum from?
So again, this is where the sort of mixed sort of heritage comes in.
Yeah.
My yaya from my mum's side was from Peloponnneso, a small village called Prasino. There's more Prasiniotes here than there are there now, which is I
Okay.
think common for a lot of small villages.
Yeah.
And Papa was from Chios, originally from Mikrasia, Samsun, I think. We have one sort of small family artifact from all my family really. It's my great grandfather who was the one that went from Samsun to Chios. Pretty well educated guy. Didn't sort of carry on obviously like that because things changed, but. I'm yet to read the entire story, but when I do, I'll tell you some more. But Samsun, I think. Samsun.
What's the artifact that they brought with them?
So, it's like one of our cousins in Greece photocopied this memoir that he had. So it's like a...
So that's the artifact.
Yeah. Well,
Actually wrote down his story.
yeah, I'm not sure to what detail it goes into, if it's more just like... If it's part of his journey, if it's a bit more sort of reflective,
I would love
philosophical.
to invite you back on this program, Tromaramu, to get you to talk to us about this memoir because
I still have to read it. It's
It
hard.
is-
I think it's not just...
Yeah.
Venikina, is it...
it's probably Katharevos or something
I
like
think
that.
it's mixed or...
2022 is the 100 years from the Mikrasiatic
It is, man,
catastrophe.
it is,
I would love for you to talk to us about your papu's
I'll make an
memoirs
effort.
and how he
Pro papo.
his memoirs and how he lived through.
Yeah, I'll
experience.
make an
I think that'd be great. as long as you promise to talk to us more about the amazing things that you all have done since then.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, so that's the heritage, yeah. And that's kind of why I've never felt one single affinity for Greece, because I've travelled the whole lot, you know. I've seen different people and I've sort of jumped into different worlds, and I think that's kind of, for me, quite a healthy way to look at it, because I already see the multiplex nature of the Greek identity.
Well, that's where it's going, though. I think we've said that as well.
Of course, yeah.
Many times.
You have more in common with the person in your suburb, the people you grew up with, than you do from the village that you're from. That's to take one of Dean's quotes and stuff. And it's true, man. It's true.
Depends.
You know? So the regions and so forth will end up dying out.
I mean, yeah, strong word, and it's probably true, but unless we give them other meaning and other ways of connecting, like with the legacy and, again, what it means for the person today, they probably will, you know. So,
what is, and I think we'll finish with this question.
Yeah, we'll do that because
it's pretty hot in here.
We promised that we would take him out for a coffee, and we here at this show.
You're assuming I have time for coffees, Dean?
I assume.
I have time for coffees.
Do you have time for coffee?
I have time for coffees.
You're Greek.
I'm
See,
Greek.
me and Pete, we were thinking the other day.
You have to go for a coffee.
We were ruminating this weekend. We were
cafe.
ruminating, Pidya, and we were ruminating over what it would be like in paradise, because everyone's got their own definition of paradise. Me and Pete's definition of paradise broadly align, and it's being able to sit somewhere at a cafeteria, drinking a coffee and expounding endlessly on the items of the day without having to work. And I think that's good. Now, I digress, and I was going to ask you a final question so we can finish, which is this. Okay, the final and most important challenge for a person your age as a Greek in the Greek community is 10 words.
Relevant to the Greek community stuff, or in their life generally, you mean?
Greek community, bugger their general life.
Finding relevance and purpose to what they, I guess, involve themselves in. That's all. That might actually be 10 words. Finding purpose.
Beautiful.
And
Oh my That's God. It. We're done.
That's 10 words.
He's a mathematician.
Thank you for joining us today, Dean. I think it was a very thorough and
Dean,
interesting discussion.
It was excruciating, and the pleasure was indeed moderate.
Yeah, the jokes are kind of hard to take, but I'm sweating, man. It's pretty hot in
there
here.
Weren't any jokes. Sorry. There were jokes. There weren't any jokes. I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. It means a lot, because, like, obviously in our own sort of ways we'd connected, and then I realised that was a thing, and then you realise that was a thing, and we also realised that was a thing, and no, it's just cool. This is happening. So
then we've got the whole Menage thing happening.
I'm going to leave now.
See you later.
Was that all right?
That was cool.
Happy with that?